Welcome to the Created Worthy podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Damrell, and I am so grateful that you're here. On this show, I talk about creative processing and how to utilize it as a skill to bring peace, joy, and freedom into our chaotic lives. I also sit down with the most incredible guests as they share their stories, many of which for the very first time. We are all created worthy. Hello, welcome to the Created Worthy podcast. I have a very special guest here with me today. Sarah Arnold is an experienced life liver, self-taught photographer, wife, mama, sister, and in full-time corporate leadership. Driven by chai tea, snacks, and love, she works hard to put her best foot forward with whatever she is creating at the moment. From memories to dinner, she does it all. As a parent and photographer, her goals include being the best mama ever to 3 little girls and capturing timeless memories that will last a lifetime. In addition to her photography business, Sarah works a full-time corporate job at a tech company and is recognized as a great leader. Because she is. And I would know because she used to be my shift manager when we were both very pregnant and worked at Starbucks. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me on Created Worthy. It is an honor to have you here today, and I'm excited to just hear about your story.
Yes, thank you. I'm super excited as well. I completely forgot about it, so I'm glad we're doing it.
Yes, me too. We were originally scheduled to do this last year, I think, or early this year.
It was in November, yeah.
In November. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got COVID, and then I got COVID.
Then we all got COVID.
And then we all got COVID, and now we're here 9 months later.
Yep.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And I would love to just start with you telling me a little bit about your story and what you've come from and come through. I remember a little bit about it. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, I would have never guessed that you and your family have walked through what you've walked through. So I'm so honored and excited that you're here to talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Arvada, Colorado. I lived split between my mom and my dad. So like when I was really young, my parents actually split up, but they never like fully got divorced at first. So I think it was about around my 7th birthday, my dad had moved out of my mom's house and got together with my stepsister's mom. And yeah, it's not as bad as it sounds, but basically we were invited to a birthday party. Things with my mom already were just really rocky with my dad. And so we were invited to a birthday party, or rather I was. My dad invited himself and came to this birthday party with my sister. And with my now sister. So she invited us to the birthday. So he came, he was there, and he decided that he was just going to stay the night. And so he stayed with the mom that night. Sorry, Dad. But anyways, he stayed with the mom that night. And then the rest was like history pretty much. So like after that, they moved out, or my dad moved out, moved in with her. And then like we kind of just went back and forth between my mom and my dad. So just to kind of give a preface of like how the dynamic works, it's very confusing and it's very different. But basically, I have 6 siblings, technically. So I have my brother, and then my older sister, Dayan, and then me, and then my little sister, Katie. However, I only grew up with my brother and my stepsisters, Jamie and Jessica. And then my little sister, Katie, has an adoptive sibling. So it's all kind of crazy. But basically, my brother and I were split between my dad and my mom, and we lived with our stepsisters, Jamie and Jessica. And so it was the 4 of us from 2001 to like 2013. No, I guess it was 2014 because they lived together for 13 years technically. So anyways, in like 2000, I want to say 13, maybe 2014, I found my little sister. And in doing that, basically, I had seen a news article about about this lady who posted a picture of herself with like a poster that says like, I'm looking for my mom and dad, my biological parents. I was adopted this day at this hospital, blah, blah, blah. So I did the same thing except for my little sister. So I said, I'm looking for my little sister. This is where she was born. This is the city she was born in. This is her around her birthday. These are her parents. And within 24 hours, her adoptive mom had actually messaged me saying like, hey, I'm Katie's mom. Like, let me talk to Katie and see if she wants to meet you guys, but that would be super cool. And so like we talked, and then she gave me Katie's phone number. And then Katie and I talked every day for like months until we met. So I think it was like 2 to 3 months after we first found each other that we actually like met in person. And that scenario was actually like really hard to like, I guess it was like, I'm not adopted, so it's not hard for me, but it's hard for her. So I would say like in the whole scope of like everything that happened, like my mom just like, she basically just decided everything for everyone. So when she had Robbie, she was in high school. She dropped out of high school, didn't finish it. Then when she was in, then she had Dayon, which is my older sister. And we didn't grow up with her because after 3 years, she met my dad.
They're half siblings, technically. You're full siblings by love, but yes.
Yeah, full siblings by love, but half siblings technically. Like we don't know who my brother's dad is, but we know that we know who Dayon's dad is, and like we've met him. So she had Robbie in high school, then she had Dayon, and then 3 years after she had Dayon, she had me, or I guess it's technically like 2 years. She had me, but in doing that, she like left Dayon and didn't raise her, and just like never wanted anything to do with her ever.
So was she raised by her dad?
Mm-hmm. She was raised by her dad and her grandma. So I was the affair child. My mom left Dayon, and then I guess 2 years later, my mom found out she was pregnant again with Katie. And basically, Katie knows that, and this is just so hard to swallow, so I'm sorry for anybody who has to hear it, but basically, my mom decided when she was pregnant with Katie that she wanted to get an abortion. And while they were driving to the clinic, my dad actually said like, hey, no, you can't, like, don't do that. Like, I'll do anything. Tell me what you want me to do and we can do it. Just don't get an abortion. And so she was like, fine, put the kid up for adoption, or I'm going to leave you guys, or I'm going to leave you with all the kids. And so this is like my dad's biggest regret. But like he says, if I could, I would go back and I would take all of you and I would not deal with her.
Right.
And so he convinced her to put Katie up for adoption. And so like, if my dad wasn't there, like I wouldn't have a little sister. And so I'm really thankful for that. So that's just like a really important part of my like journey is, so I found her, and then I found my older sister Dayon like 6 months after I found my younger sister. And so it's just like kind of crazy how I grew up with three siblings. And
we
then
need
I
a tree. We need a drawing. Can you draw
I know,
a family tree?
It's so funny. My little sister and I actually want to start a podcast together about our family tree and like all the differences that we've experienced and like how different our lives are. And
I'm 100% in support of that. You should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can totally help you.
Yes, I will totally come to you for pointers because it's been on my mind a lot lately. But back to the story. So I grew up with my sisters. That was a super long story. I grew up with my brother and my stepsisters. And then when I was like 19 to 20, I met my little sister and my older sister for the first time. And then after that, we just kind of like have become a solid group together. Our relationships are all very different. So like my sister, Jamie, my stepsister, Jamie, and I, we have like a really, really tight knit relationship. Like we're probably the closest out of every one of us. And then my sister, Jessica, also just like super tight knit relationship. But then like Katie and I think maybe it's just because we're like biological siblings that we just have this like undoubted, I guess, relationship together. Like we just became sisters and we knew that we were sisters. And so it's just something that we had to.
And like, you guys look a lot alike.
Yeah, we do.
A lot alike.
We do. It's so funny. She's like almost the spitting image of my dad and like that side of the family. Whereas like I look way more like my mom, which is kind of crazy how like genetics work. Genetics are weird.
It is
so weird.
It's so wild. And you have 3 girls that look all completely different.
All completely different. And it just reminds me so much of my siblings. So like I mean, every one of us looks different, but we all have similarities. And so that part of the journey is just kind of where I'm at now. So then I guess basically lived with my dad mostly because obviously we have lots of strained relationships with my mom. And so it's really hard to get along with her. So I keep her at a distance. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's really hard to get along with her. I just have boundaries now, which I didn't used to have. And like as a child or I guess a high schooler, I got to deal with a lot of that firsthand and like see how evil she could really be, I guess. And I don't really want to call her evil, but she kind of is.
When you make bad decisions, people form opinions about you, and you have to do everything you can to protect yourself and your family. So setting boundaries is actually like the best thing you could ever do, whether she's evil or not. That doesn't take away from the fact that she's made some really hard decisions that have hurt people, and you don't want those to be enabled in your life and continued to affect you and your family going forward. So I think that that's totally healthy. And it actually is, it's really hard to set boundaries with your mom or with anybody really, but especially with a parent, because yes, I'm sure you still love her to an extent, even though you don't understand why she would make the decisions that she has made.
Yeah.
And that is a really hard process to walk through and to just live in, especially I think as you get older and you become a mom yourself, you realize how much that mom relationship is vital and important, and how broken perhaps yours was. I relate. Those boundaries, I think, are what keep us from letting that control who we are presently. So
exactly. It's really funny that you say that, because boundaries, one of the biggest things that you taught me was to hold boundaries. So like, that's like, I remember early conversations after we both had Leia and Ella, and like we were sitting there talking about our boundaries and how we can like hold them and how we have a space for them. And it's just like, that resonated with me so much, especially because I have kids. Like you have kids and you can't subject them to like what you were subjected to. And so like, that's, as a mom, I guess that's kind of, that's the choice I had to make. I have to make that choice to keep that kind of thing at a distance. Like I don't want that here near my kids. And so unfortunately that leads to my next bit, which is where I'm at in the journey now. I mean, I went through all those hardships and I learned what not to do from my mom. However, I couldn't escape it totally, because I allowed myself to live with my brother, and there was nothing wrong at first. We lived together for 3-4 years while I had my kids. And so there was nothing wrong at first. But then last year in September, he started dating some girl that was a little bit crazy. And she didn't settle with me very well. He wouldn't let me meet her like face to face. I would have to like let her in the house secretly. And it was just a very weird scenario. And so come to find out, after we moved out, after everything happened, we broke the lease in April and we moved into our own house by ourselves for the first time in the 11 years that Dylan and I have been together. We live alone with no roommates. But what led to that was this girl just causing a lot of issues with my brother, and he stopped working, and we knew something was wrong. And it was apparent that something was wrong. We just didn't know what until after we moved out. And I think it was in May, my dad found out that they were doing meth together.
Meth?
In the house where I lived with my
your
kid.
Children and your husband?
Yeah. So that's like the real reason why we moved.
What did you do with that? Like, obviously you moved, but when you found that out, like, did you still have to see him?
So thankfully, no. This is the last few months have just been like crazy. I can't even believe, like, I have to tell people, like, when people ask like, oh, how's your family? I'm like, do you really want to know? But I can't believe that this is even happening. So in April, we moved, we broke the lease. I guess technically in March we broke the lease, but like we moved out April 6th and the lease was up on April 30th. And so on April 30th, that's the last time I've seen my brother. So I haven't seen my brother since April 30th, but basically on that day, I guess the week leading up to that, like it was so stressful. I was trying to get the house cleared and ready to go for a move out inspection that was happening like May 1st through the 5th. And when I went over there, like the house was completely trashed after we moved our stuff out. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is a thing. Like, I can't believe I'm walking into this. And there was trash everywhere. There was.
So they're like, living in active addiction.
They were. Yeah, they were.
Okay.
I don't really know what my brother's doing now, but yeah, well, we haven't seen each other since April 30th. He's tried to get into contact with me. I just don't really, I can't, I don't have the room or the capacity to deal with it. So I just kind of like give him as short answers as I can if I do text back. But he has
Right.
caused a lot of drama with my dad and my mom. And I think my mom just kind of like delayed the inevitable.
Oh my
So
goodness. So now you're having to figure out how to have new boundaries with your brother. You trusted so much originally that you let him live with you
yeah,
and your family. And I
yeah.
know I've gone to a few of the birthday parties. He's always been there, but it's been years since I've
Mhm.
like come. But man, I'm so sorry that you guys have walked through that, and that that is even something that you had to be blindsided by. Like that is not okay.
No.
And I think it really says a lot too. And it's unfortunately so common that people meet somebody and kind of find themselves in active addiction, whether he's in it now or not. At the time he was.
Mhm.
Um, and it's evident by the way people live and how sketchy they get and not communicating and doing things like not going to work and not paying your
Yeah.
bills and doing whatever you stealing, doing whatever you can to get that next high.
Yeah.
And that is no way for you to live, much
Mhm.
less your family. And it's not fair. But thank you for even sharing about that, because that is all very recent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's a lot to process through, even just in that. And I think that taking that time and space, like that's not you being mean, that's you protecting yourself. Like
Mhm.
we're lesson learners, not lesson repeaters,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's like something that I think for all of my family, including my mom, this is something that none of us have ever had to deal with. And I think that it's just like, as parents, my parents included, like, this is what I've noticed as parents, you want to save your children. And that's literally what you want to do. And so, like, right now, with everything that my mom and dad are doing, they're trying to save my brother, or they were. My dad has cut him off completely, and my mom has too now. But they were trying to save him and trying to help him and trying to make him like steer into the right path. But right now, he just doesn't want that. And it's apparent that he doesn't want that. And so, unfortunately, we don't really have any choice but to let him go down the path that he's going down.
Well, I will definitely be praying for him and just hoping that somehow, some way he does start to desire a better life, because it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, just to pivot a little bit, I want you to take me back to when you discovered photography and how you
Mm.
discovered your love for photography and then how you turned that into a business.
Yes, that's a really great question. So when I was a senior in high school, I was the only one out of the four of us that got to go do senior pictures, for whatever reason. Thanks, Dad. But when we
Hashtag
did that, maybe
favorite.
it's because I was the most dramatic and I like requested it. And so I probably got it because I was very demanding. But I got senior pictures done, and the photographer that I was doing senior pictures with just inspired me so much that I was like, this is what I have to do. I have to do that. I like have to do that. And so I trained with her for a little bit, not very long, because when I did my first or one of my very first weddings with her, I was tasked with photographing in low light settings. And it's very hard to do that without a flash. And you have to know how to use flash and bounce flash off certain areas. And so after that wedding, she told me that she could barely use any of the photos that I had provided because they were blurry or they just didn't look very good or they were like not the right subject matter. And so that moment was one of the hardest things for me to like take. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore because it was just like so discouraging. And it's not anything to do with like her or anything like that. It was just like for me, it was a process where I was like, well, am I really good enough to do this? And so
Right.
it was hard for me. So it was just like this is this was what I wanted to do. But at the same time, when I heard that, I was so discouraged by it that I was just like, well, maybe I won't for now. And so I held off for a while until I had Leia. or I guess maybe it was like right before. No, maybe it was right after. I think it was right after I had Leia. But anyways, yes, Leia's my first daughter. And after I had her, I just felt so encouraged to do photography again. And so I was taking photos of her, and I booked my first wedding, my first solo wedding. And it was for one of my very first friends ever. And she basically booked me. And from there, I just kind of like took off. I'll admit, when I first started doing it, when Leia was born, I was not the best. I used way too much of this and way too much of that. And it wasn't like the pretty photos that you see now. And so just, I think it's really important to have an experience like that, to hit that point in your career where you're just like, am I good enough to do this? Do I really have the ability to be a photographer or do whatever I'm doing? And then once you have that moment, from there, you can either stop what you're doing and not grow from it, or you can grow from it. And so that's what I chose to do, was to grow from it. And I'm not going to lie, there's been times in my photography career where I've been told by really important people that my work is not good. And it hurts.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I have seen from the beginning to now, and your work is truly beautiful. Like at the beginning, I also thought it was beautiful. I am not a photographer, but I have definitely seen like how far you've come. And I think a part of that too is kind of developing that eye, right?
Mhm.
Like that's something that you have to practice. You have to be in situation after situation, different situations, in weddings, in low light, in natural light, in harsh light, all of these different scenarios, so that you can train yourself to capture that memory in that moment. And then you have to be able to see those things. Like
Yeah.
when we came over a few months ago I can't even remember why we stopped by. Girl Scout cookies. That's what it was. Yes. I was like, whatever, just take a picture of the three. You're like, no, the lighting, we got to turn around. I would have never thought about that, ever. Never thought about that. But that has happened, and that you've developed that eye from continuing to push through and push forward. So like hearing that people have been really rude and people have been harsh about your work, I want to punch them in the face, but also I just want to tell you that like I see so much beauty in what you do, and I hope and pray you continue to do it, because you have an eye, you have a gift, you put these incredible minis together. And I know that it has come from you continuing to push forward despite the things that have come your way, whether it is like financial problems from corporate or work or family or whatever. Like you continue to push forward and continue to pursue your passion, and that does pay off. It already has. And I'm just grateful that you have stepped into that gift and continue to pursue it, because you really are good. You are gifted and you've worked hard for it.
Thank you.
Own it,
I
girl.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard when important people that you love, people that you really cherish, say things like your photography is not good. And it's just like, when you have those moments, it's hard, because it's just like, what do you say to that? You don't say anything. Like, I mean, you do, but like, right. For me personally, I just choose to ignore it and say, well, if you don't like it, you don't like it. I like it. So, and other people like it. So that's on you.
Right.
But I mean, and it's funny because some of these people who've said these things have come back and been like, wow, that picture's really good. Or like they'll see a photo shoot that I do and they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm like, do you really think so? Or are you lying to me?
Right. You're like, you already spoke your truth. Can you just shut your mouth now? I would rather never hear from you again about this, at least.
Yes. Like I love you everywhere else, but please don't comment on this unless you actually mean it.
Yeah. And if you really mean it, then like write me a note and go over the top, because you hurt my feelings.
Yes, exactly. We're all human. We all have feelings. And yes, it hurts. It hurts when people are like that, especially when you do something like a creative business, because it's just like, that's what you created. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's hurtful. It's like, okay,
it's a reflection of you in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, and it makes you stop and think like, do other people think that too? And I'm sure they do, and maybe they just don't voice it. But I have a very strong feeling about photography, and like I think that every photographer is different, and every photographer has a different style. And so when you go into looking for somebody who's a photographer, you look for something like, do you like that style? Do you like how they pose people? Do you like this aspect about them? And you just have to like ask those questions to yourself. And so if you can't answer those questions, then maybe you're not ready to choose a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have to explore, maybe you have to go through a couple and figure out what style you actually like. But I mean, I know a lot of people who like certain styles, and everyone's different. And so I will say that I don't expect to be everybody's cup of tea.
Right. Which is important in any business, especially small business, because,
Mm-hmm.
and especially creative business, like you were saying, because that's across the board. There,
Yeah.
for watercolor artists, like there are going to be watercolor artists who do incredible portraits in one way, and other people are going to do them in another way. Or lettering, my lettering might not be somebody's style, but I know a variety of other lettering artists who are incredible. Same with photography, same with invitation design, anything in the creative realm, especially, but really in small business in general. Like not everybody is going to be your cup of tea. And I think as the business owner, that is one of the hardest things to like accept, is that you can't serve everybody, and you're not going to be right for everybody. And to find peace in that and be like, no, I'm just going to do my work fully and entirely for myself, really, so that I'm creating the things that are in line with who I am and what I want to create. And then allow that to be what attracts people to us.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself takes time.
It
when
does.
you come into any business, you're like, I want to do it for everyone. I want to be able to do this. But really, that just leads to burnout and overwhelm, and feeling like you're not enough, and constantly comparing yourself in the work that you do to somebody who's been in the business for 10 years. You can't do that. Not when you're a brand new business owner. Now you've been in business now for 10 years.
10 years. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Well, and it's funny, you posed an interesting thought in my mind, and that was, not everybody's, obviously I said this, but not everybody's going to be your cup of tea, but also like in the sense of, as a photographer, as a business owner, not every client is going to be what you as a business owner want.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that in like a sense that, oh, that person's like less than me. I don't say it like that. What I mean is like, some people just are not compatible. And so if you take a photo of somebody and you're just like, this session was not great, it's not going to work out, and you're going to have to figure out something else. And it's just like, you have to be able to like know that. And that's why it's so important to like meet people face to face, especially for photography. Face to face for the first time is so incredibly important, because you want to be able to see that person and be like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love you guys. We jive well. We understand each other. You guys listen. You guys have a complete understanding of what I'm asking for. But then there are other people where you're just like working with them and you're just like, nope, just nope.
Right.
And that's it. And that's all that it is. And it's just like, I probably won't ever do business with that person again. Not because I don't like them, but because we didn't connect. They may not have liked my work. For whatever reason, but at the same time, it's just like, it goes both ways. Yeah. Right. As a client, you might not like the work, but as a business owner, you might not jive well with the person that you're trying to do business with.
Totally. And I think that it would be like trying to literally be friends with every single person. You can't. No human being can be friends with every single person. And we are all so individual that like our relationships typically look differently with every person we are friends with for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And that's the exact same thing when it comes to clients. It's the exact same thing. And you want to ideally have a client who you feel like is like a friend. Mm-hmm. And if you don't jive with somebody just from a human to human level, that's okay.
Yeah,
that's totally fine. I love that you brought that up. I think that that's a really important thing to just talk about and understand when you are thinking about potentially opening your own business or pursuing a passion and turning it into a business in any sense.
Yeah.
So with that, I would love to know a little bit more about your goals with photography. Are you looking to one day be able to go into it full time, or do you like having your corporate job and then having your photography business separate?
So I constantly fight myself on this. There was a point in time where I literally could have done photography full time and been okay with it. However, I love, and this may just be the company that I work for, and it may just be this, I guess, the season I'm in right now, but I absolutely love my job and I love working for the company that I do. And I honestly don't foresee myself going anywhere or changing anything about that in the next 5 to 10 years. Like, I absolutely adore it. And I think this path that I'm on is very fulfilling. But I love photography so much. And if it was up to me, if I could make enough money, if I could be everybody's cup of tea, well, not everybody, but if I could be the cup of tea for enough people to make my income at my corporate job, sure, I would do it. But I don't. And part of that is probably because I don't do everything that every other photographer does. I don't do, like, I don't even know what the word is, but
Marketing.
well, I do market. I just don't.
You do, yeah.
I lazily do it.
Same, girl. Me too. And I am full time in my business.
Yes, but I just, like, I don't do it how other photographers do it. Like, the way that I charge people is vastly different than other photographers. And that part of that is just because I don't think that you can put a limit on a moment. Like, I feel like if you're photographing a wedding and they're paying you thousands of dollars to photograph that wedding, I would expect, and this is maybe just me, maybe I'm just a cheap person, but I would expect to get a fully edited gallery. I get it. Editing weddings is hard. It's a lot of work. You put a lot of time and blood and sweat and everything into it. Lots of coffee, lots of late nights. If you're a mom, lots of time away from the kids. But I still feel like that's one day that if they can't have a full gallery for the amount of money they spent on it, then why are you even doing it? You know, like, what are you going to do with those pictures? What are you going to do with those hundreds of pictures that you have? I mean, that's just how I see it. It's just like, I take the photos, I capture the moments to deliver them to the people without gouging them for the gallery. And that just holds me into a different place than most other photographers. A lot of photographers I know, they charge by the photo, or they only deliver like 400 pictures out of a 12-hour wedding. I'm sorry, but if you've ever been to a wedding that's where you're there for 12 hours, there's so much going on, so much. It's never
Right.
like, it's never easy to choose. And it's also hard because as a photographer, you tend to overshoot because you want to make sure you get the moments, but I don't know.
But yes, I think that that's really incredible, and something that does set you apart is that you are making it available to more people. And I think that might be part of your niche and who you're called to serve, are people who do deserve beautiful pictures, but might not have the budget to pay $10,000 for a photographer for their wedding.
Yeah.
We need photographers who fill in that gap as well, because regardless, there are people who are getting married and want their memories captured. So I think the fact that you're willing to say, even if it takes a little bit more work on my end, I'm going to deliver because I believe that this is something that is valuable to you and will serve you forever. That's like such a beautiful reflection of your heart. I love that. I love that you do that. And I love that that is something that's unique to you, because just don't ever lose that. Okay. Don't ever lose it. Okay.
I won't. I promise. I promise. But yes, so that's kind of why I'm like, I don't think I could do it full time, because if I changed how I was doing it, but I don't want to change how I'm doing it because I love how I do it. And I love the people that I do get to work with. I have met some of the most amazing clients, and it's just like, to me, it's important to be able to keep those people and keep them around and go from photographing their wedding to photographing their maternity photos to taking pictures of their
Yes.
babies. Like,
I think that's really important to have a photographer who can follow you throughout your life.
mhm.
We had the same photographer take photos year after year, and then she did our wedding, and we would definitely still go back to her. She just having that one person, that established relationship, is such a beautiful gift. And she did the same thing for us. Like, we couldn't afford the typical amount, and she was like, tell me how much you can afford and I'm going to do it for you because I care and I
Mhm.
want to. And I was like, oh, this is what a gift.
Yeah. Sorry, kids are coming down now.
Kids.
Hi,
That's
why are you
okay.
guys down here? Did Daddy send you down here? What?
We'll wrap it up.
Okay, can you go back upstairs for 5 minutes, please? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But yeah,
So, last question for you. What is your favorite way to create?
it's different every day, but
I
right
love that
now,
answer.
right now it's taking photos. This summer has been one of the most fulfilling summers because I got to go to the Grand Tetons, and I thank my husband so much because he's just my partner in crime and the best supporter. But before we left, we were looking at like things to do in Teton while we were there, and we have the kids, so obviously it's like a lot of work because we're camping, and then we're just like, well, what else do we do and all this stuff. And so we were doing all this research, and he basically was like, Sarah, we have to go here. And he sent me pictures of this place. And it's funny because I had looked it up too, and it was on my list. But there's this place in the Tetons, or just outside of the Tetons, called Mormon Row. And it's this barn that basically in the background, you can see the entire set of the Tetons. And it's one of the most like, I guess it's, I would say it's a world renowned place. Like, I know that it's known. I
Wow.
know that it's super popular. Photographers from all over go there super early in the morning, super close to sunset. Whenever they do go, we chose to go first thing in the morning. And the most amazing thing was, like, we drove through the Tetons, or through the camp, or I guess the national park, to get to the other side of the park to get to Mormon Row. And as we we're driving through, it's all foggy. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get a good picture. This is going to be such a bummer. Like, we're not going to get it. And so then we're out there, and like we pull in, and it's sunny, and there's a lot of fog over the mountains, and it looks cloudy on that side, but it's really just fog moving through. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just start taking pictures and hope for the best. And so I'm taking pictures. And then Dylan's mom, she came on the trip with us. She came out, and she was standing there with me. And I was like, hey, do you think you could take like a picture of me just taking pictures? Like, I don't care if it's a picture or whatever. And so she starts recording, and she gets this amazing video of like of the whole scenario. So she starts recording, and she's like, look at all these photographers out here, like making voiceovers on the background. And then she like pans over the barn and then pans to me. And it's like literally one of my favorite things ever, because it's like, that's my passion. And that's what I love to do right now in this moment. And like,
She captured you.
she captured me in the moment. And it's just like, there's photography for other people, and then there's photography for yourself. And right now, like, that photography for myself was exactly what I needed to just like kickstart and spark up a passion again. And so that's my favorite way to create right now, is taking photos, and it's either people or a barn in Teton.
Oh my gosh. Sarah, will you send me that photo? I actually have
Yes.
seen that photo, and I was shocked. Like, even thinking about it, I'm like, that I would hang that up in a 30-foot by 10-foot photo in my house. Like, I don't have a wall that big, but if I did, I would put it on the wall.
I mean, I have a 20 by 30 print of it hanging in my house right now.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yes.
Inches or feet?
Inches.
Okay.
Inches. Yeah.
That's more realistic. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But can you send that to me? I would love to put that on your show notes, or just attach it to the episode
Yeah, of
somehow.
course.
So
I
yes,
totally
yes.
will. Yeah. I also am, this is just like something that I didn't know I could do, and I started doing it, but I am selling prints of them. So if you guys are ever interested, I have prints.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. So do you want to just wrap up with where people can contact you if they would like to connect for photography or to follow along with your life?
Yeah. So probably the easiest way to follow me or contact me is through Instagram. I have my Instagram, which is, or I guess my personal is, oh gosh, let me look. Hold on. I think it's Sarah Arnold 323. But let me check. Hold up. Yeah, personal is Sarah Arnold 323, and then my photography page is Epic Arts Photography, all one word, and it's Epic with 2 P's because, as mentioned earlier, my last name or my maiden last name is Ep. So
Yes.
if you ever want to know why my photography business is Epic Arts, it's because I am Ep. That's
She
it.
is Ep. I think
That's
a
literally what
perfect
people
place.
call me.
You are. We originally started recording and I started recording her bio and I said her maiden name. And this is a very special person, Sarah Ep. And I was like, wait a minute.
But I mean,
Wait.
that's how you knew me for the longest
Yes.
time. It's Sarah Ep, and then I got
That's
married,
true.
and then it was Sarah Arnold. And like, it's okay. It's all good.
Well, you're always going to be an Ep. So at least you captured that. Did you catch that pun? You captured that in your photography business.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Oh,
thank you so much for recording with me today. I am super excited for the listeners to be able to get a peek into your story. Your vulnerability and your courage is inspiring. And just to hear about everything that you've walked through and the ways that you continue to overcome and continue to just show up and be yourself and own who you are is inspiring, and it's a gift. So thank you for joining me.
thank you. It was so good to see you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Created Worthy podcast. If you want to connect more, you can follow along with me over at Danielle Damrell or Damrell Creative Co. on Instagram and Facebook. All the links to today's topics are in the show notes, and you can also find a link to my Patreon, which is where you can help support my mission on this show and keep it going. Ratings and reviews really do matter, so make sure to hook me up with 5-star review. Any less, I would rather hear your opinions over email. So anyway, if this episode resonated with you at all, share the love, send it to a friend, or post it on your social media. But don't forget to tag me so I see it and can share it too. I hope all of you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you on the flip side.